Hey, happy 200. 200. Can we let that sink in for a second? 200 episodes. 16 months of podcasting. We're not even 2 yet. What is going on? Welcome to Living the Next Chapter, the 200th episode. 200. The big 200. So happy you're here. Welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Thank you for coming back for episode 200. And if this is your first episode, you have some homework. There's 199 episodes in the rearview mirror for you to check out. But I'm so happy that you're here. Today I have, again, back. It seems like he's coming back quite often. Dominick Domasky is here from Motivation Champs. We're going to talk about publishing, getting your story out. I'm going to ask him the hard-hitting questions that every author wants to know. Like, how do I do this, Dom? What do I do? Dom is a great guy. He was actually one of the first guests way at the beginning. Came back for episode 100. Now he's back again for episode 200. I joked and said, if he keeps coming back, he's going to get his own parking spot if he comes back for every 100 episodes. So I wanted to say thank you for being here for every episode that you've heard so far. And I would encourage you to go back and listen to the amazing guests that have been through the doors of Living the Next Chapter. And Dom's back again, so happy to have Dom here. I'm happy to have you here. The three of us are going to have a great conversation. So welcome to Living the Next Chapter, episode 200. Grab yourself a coffee, pull up a chair, and let's talk to Dominick Domasky here on episode 200, Living the Next Chapter. You, me, Dom. Here we go. Okay, everyone, if you're paying attention to any of the podcast episodes you've heard in the past, there's a name that keeps surfacing to the top because good people rise up, and we need to celebrate them. And that good person today is back for episode 200. My friend, who, again, kind of kicked me in the butt to start this podcast, is here, Dominick Domasky. Motivation Champs in the house. Hi, Dom.
Hey, I'm thrilled to be here. Episode 200. Holy cow.
So you were here for episode 100. Now you're back again. It feels like yesterday. And here we are again.
You know, most people ditch me after that much time. So you must be silly like me.
Yeah, I think I have a stalking problem. It's good to see you again. I love the smile. I love all the things going on behind you there. And I'm happy to have you back. Give us an update from episode 100. What's new in your world? What's going on?
Wow, thank you. So, I'm always on this mission to share inspiration, positivity, and smiles, and really help as many people as we can on that journey. So probably over 100 authors now we've helped them share their story. Like our dear friend Shar Murphy you had on, and the authors of Mission Hope. Here's somebody that wants to help other people share their story, and we were able to work together, and you were able to interview all those authors. I mean, so really, sometimes you go for something like you on episode 200. Here, you put yourself out there. People tell you a million reasons why it's not going to work. We have those fears and doubts in our minds ourselves. Some days are better than others, right? Some days we get kicked and we think, well, we should just give up, but we don't.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say. At this point, you're starting to say, hey, maybe what I envisioned, maybe what I hoped for, maybe we're on the way. I use the word sometimes the precipice. We may not be there yet, but you can see all of a sudden out in the distance, hey, there's a mountain. There's where I was trying to go. There's the ocean. There's the sea. There's this.
Right.
So that's where we're at today, my friend.
I love it. So I started this podcast based on a conversation we had way back in the day. Just trying to create a podcast for authors who maybe weren't having a great experience on some other shows, but let's get them a good show where they can get on and talk about their books and promote them and put the focus on them. And I tell everybody that I meet in our pre-interview that because I'm not an author, I have a little bit of imposter syndrome at the beginning, because who would come on my show for authors and talk to a guy who's not an author? That seems a little strange when you can go on another podcast and talk author talk and speak to another author, and two authors go back and forth and share their journey about writing a book. But what I keep telling everybody, Dom, is instead of trading stories about how I write compared to how you write, I move into the audience and I tell everybody that I come on my show that I'm like an audience member with a microphone.
Yeah.
So I ask the question and then blend into the audience for the answer. And that's kind of what I think is a little unique about Living the Next Chapter. And it gives a little different flavor to the podcast.
Yeah.
So we talk to the readers that would be buying the book, and we talk to other authors that are thinking about writing a book. So we cover both.
When I listen, and I listen to a lot of episodes, I think there's a sense of wonder when you answer the question, ask the question sometimes where you, like, cause maybe you haven't been down that journey. Tell me more, somebody that's done it and wrote 20 books, they might be jaded or think it's so simple or, hey, tell me more. I want to know. Tell me that. What was that like? I think you've asked that question. What was that like? I think I remember hearing that.
Yeah. The one thing I was thinking about today, listening to some shows, was the whole idea around imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned it for you when I first started the show. I'm like, who would listen to this? Who would come on my show? And I'm wondering what you think of this, Don. Do you think that in some cases, when we fly the flag of imposter syndrome, we're hiding the fact that we are good at something, and we're afraid to acknowledge that we're good at something because we don't want to come off as arrogant?
Are you going to do this to me already? Even you asking the question, I'm like welling up here. I'm sad for people that feel this imposter syndrome, and I hurt for them, right? You don't have to feel like that. There's no better than or less than, like your journey is completely different than somebody else's. So, because you're not Gary Vee or because you're not Judy Bloom or whoever it is that you have this, they're not you. And if I don't, like for me, I can't think that I would be happy being anybody else. And like really, and I would drill down to anybody in the audience. Would you really be happy? Would you really be happy being this person? Well, then you wouldn't have your family. You wouldn't have your beautiful house. I want to live in California well, then you'd have people with a camera in your face all the time, or then you'd have to be phony half the time, or you'd have to attend these events at midnight or whatever. So I just wonder, like, I hurt for people that feel that, and so that's where I want to. I'll just start with that.
Yeah, because I just wonder how many books haven't been written, how many songs haven't been written, how many podcasts haven't been started because people feel like, hey, I'm not that person to do that or put myself out there, or I don't feel confident. But again, I just kind of think that there's sometimes we do things. We all have talents that are second nature to us that are astounding to everyone else. Like, okay, I was thinking on the way home, I drive standard. My car is a standard manual transmission.
Yeah.
And when other people get in my car, they're like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. I'd kill myself. I can't drive standard. Yeah. Clutch, gas, brake, hills. I'd freak out. But for me, it's just second nature and it feels weird. I tell people I can't drive automatic. I can only drive manual. And they're like, what? Yeah. But to me, it feels normal. But to others, they admire the fact that I can do something they can't do.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I have a slight bit of like feeling like I have an edge over someone else because I can do something someone else can't.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, then imposter syndrome kind of comes in and I kind of hide behind it, saying, well, I don't want to feel like I'm arrogant, that I can do something special in someone else's eyes. So I'm going to hide behind imposter syndrome and use it as a little way to deflect from my arrogance of knowing something that somebody else can't do.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just wondering, in that situation, how do we celebrate the things that we're good at without seeing like we're arrogant or coming off like we're putting other people down because they don't know what we know?
Wow. You got some deep questions. How do I know that answer? Well, I just think if you could be yourself, right? And I'm just like, I talk a lot about point of view. Like, let's
Mhm.
say posting on social media for an author.
Yeah.
An author, it is not bragging to show where you write at. It is not, the world sometimes wants to see the world through your eyes. So let's say we meet somebody who's in Ireland or you're in Canada. I've never been to Canada. So or I've been to Canada, drove through it twice,
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, if you show me a lake in Canada, it's the most beautiful thing. And it's not, you're opening me up to this new world. And similar to an author or storyteller, here you are opening me up to this world, a world that I didn't know. Sometimes that world could be domestic violence. Sometimes
Yeah.
that world could be teaching me how to something. It could be maybe teaching finances, but it's just opening somebody up to a world, like you said about the standard. Well, you and I grew up, my dad's a landscaper. And when I went back to work for him in my 20s, I said, Dad, before I come back to work for you, you got to teach me how to drive a standard. So I was grinding these gears on these giant dump trucks and things like that. Now I have a Jeep that I leave running when I go into the convenience store because I don't think anybody could
Nobody
steal
knows
it
how to
because,
drive it.
they don't
Yeah.
know how to drive it. So,
Yeah.
probably not a good answer to your question, but that's where I'm going.
Because I'm thinking there's authors out there, Dom, who have a story to tell, and to them it seems normal.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's my story, and like, who cares? It's not that big of a deal. But there's other people who admire and would love to learn from that person and could inspire them to do whatever they did. And they look up to them going, oh my gosh, I can't believe your story's amazing. Why haven't you told your story? Why haven't you got out there and shared? You
Yeah.
could motivate and help so many people. And they're like, oh, it's just my story.
Yeah.
Don't put that down, and don't rob your audience of your story thinking that it's nothing. Again, me driving standard is nothing to me. I don't even think about it. I have no thoughts while I'm driving the car that I'm going to miss a gear because I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
So, but again, if somebody sat beside me, they're like, how do you know how to do all these things at once?
Yeah.
I'm like, do what? Right?
Yeah.
That answer of like, what are you talking about? You're driving standard. I don't know. I didn't notice. Right? It's just every day to me.
Yeah.
So again, an author could be like an expert on something or live something, like our friend Debbie. And to them, it's like, that's just my life. But do you know that you can help somebody by sharing that story and putting it out into the world?
I think to speak to an author, I think what they need to know, or a storyteller, is rather than get so caught up in benchmarks and metrics and stuff like that, why are you doing it? Maybe your story, rather than help, maybe like, let's say people are looking at views and things like that. Well, I didn't get X amount. I didn't get as many views as The Rock. Well, no kidding. I didn't get as many, but could that view be the right view? Meaning you wanted to tell your story and there's somebody out there that's going through what you went through. And maybe they don't have the strength, or maybe they don't think they have the strength. And you found them that day, or they found you and heard that message of hope, heard, hey, when that partner's treating you a certain way, you are loved. Like our friend Paul Gray.
Yeah.
Paul Gray used to say,
Yeah.
love Paul Gray. Paul Gray used to talk about, Paul Gray, his message was God and God's love, grace.
Yeah.
God's love is grace. Love is grace. And so he used to say, like, let's say somebody was hurting and they didn't have a father. Paul believed, well, you did have a father. He believed God was everybody's father.
Mhm.
And so let's say somebody was struggling because of a relationship they had with a father who left them, a father who wasn't there for them, a father who treated them a certain way. Paul, in his message, was, you have a father. You have a father that created you. You have a father that believed in you. You have a father that made you in his likeness. Maybe one person could find that message. And that was hurting, that was thinking, maybe I'm going to hurt myself. Maybe nobody loves me. Well, Paul had a message that said, somebody does love you. And so there's so many authors out there with that story that could help one person, like our friend Shar. Shar overcame cancer 4 times.
I know.
Like, here's somebody, and wow, I can only think of the pain that people are going through when they're struggling, fighting cancer and things like that. Well, somebody did make it through, sure. And then she got it again, and she made it through. And then she got it again, made it through. And then years later, again. And so maybe somebody in all these worlds of things that people are going through, there is somebody out there that's walked that same path and been through. So if you're one of those storytellers that like you think your life is normal, no, man, you're going, whether it's the relationship you have with your children, that you had with your parents, that you had with a boss at work, somebody out there is going through something and your words could help them. I believe that 100%.
Yeah. So as I look back over 200 episodes, Tom, I've had authors as young as like 12, 13 years old, as old as 81.
Yeah.
Come on the show. Everyone's different. Everyone has different topics. Everyone has different outlooks on life. I've had probably some of the deepest conversations with people ever. And, with 100, at this point, 198 episodes as we're recording today, it's 198 people I've talked to because of this podcast. And it's insane that I have the opportunity to be in some of these people's calendars, to be quite honest, that they will throw open and put their life on hold to come on this podcast and share their story. There's times where I have to I leave here, I hit stop on record, I go run around the block because I don't know what to do with the energy that I've received from my interaction with these great people. Well, I love that.
Hey, I'm going to cut in here as 200 episodes, 198, going on 200. You've talked to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. You sit in their room, you've sit in their car, you've sit with them when they've had these rough days. You've connected them to somebody that's going through what they've gone through. So as we talk imposter syndrome, and it touches on us all at some time, but here, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, maybe got through something or were able to because of you and living the next chapter. So ta-da, my friend.
And one of the big joys for me is connecting other authors with each other that would never have met.
Yeah.
And they come across my emails and I'm like, oh, Dom would be a great fit for Shar, and Shar would be a great fit for Debbie, and Debbie would be a great fit for this person. I just love making those connections where they would never have met otherwise.
Yeah.
But they've been on the show, right?
There's a beauty in that. And you're the kind of guy that you're not saying, well, do me a favor, I need something out of you. Just you believe this person and this person, they could make magic together, so you connect them. And that's a wonderful thing.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So Dom, for a brand new author that's listening and they're like, okay, 200 episodes, that's a lot. But they're thinking they want to write. They want to get out and get their story out there, but they are completely at a loss. They're afraid of the process. They're afraid of how much this is going to cost. They're afraid of time commitments, and they need someone to hold their hand. From your perspective, with all the amazing authors you've worked with, you have a wealth of knowledge that I'd like to tap into today. Can you give us some easy starting points just to get the ball rolling as far as publishing and the big picture of what you do? Because I want people to get a sense from you, because you just give truth to people, and I really like that.
Hey, thank you. And so let's start from the beginning. And this is a subject you'd have to have 1,000 episodes and we'd still be talking. It's just something so number one, it doesn't have to cost you anything. So, if you're in a position where, I don't have the money, I have zero money to start. That's where I started too. I had went broke, lost $500,000 in business, had no money to start when I wrote my first book. Okay. So let's just talk. Well, how's that even possible? Well, you could write your own book. You could find friends to edit it. You could find another friend. You could get in groups. You could get in beta reading groups. No cost. You could publish an ebook on Amazon. You could have a student do your cover for you. That's a starting point if cost was this thing that you're like, well, I can't. Okay. You could, once you wrote that book, you could shop it to 50 different publishers. You could say, because if cost was the thing, well, rather than saying I need a book out in 6 months, maybe take a year to send query letters. Maybe when they respond, they won't all respond, but maybe when they respond, your social media, you don't have enough followers. Okay, work on getting followers. Maybe when they respond, your business plan wasn't good enough. Maybe Google business plans and start to research that aspect of it. So cost is it's a non-question, right? If you want it to be a non-question, it is. If somebody has on the reverse, if you want to make a gold-plated book or something like that, if you have unlimited funds, you can find somebody to make a gold-plated book. So that's smoke. So let's get to, as we go down the process, smoke in cells. Sometimes when you walk into a business, they would say, well, I don't want this because I'm busy right now. I don't want this because I already have somebody that's going to come in next week and do that for me. There's sometimes objections are smoke. So that objection of cost is really smoke on, well, what's the real reason? What's the real reason why? Yeah. Okay, so let's we'll start there. Okay, so we eliminated cost. So then the second, you can steer me back at any point, but then right. Well, where do I start? Well, start with a word. Start with a sentence. Start with an outline. 10 points. I have outlines sitting behind me and in this room that are in, like, I'll have an arc that is 3 words on it. Sometimes it says beginning, middle, end. Right? That's all I've written, at this point. That's the worst book ever. But I wrote something on the page. And then from that point, I might put Dom meets this, big twist, ending, and now, moving that from the arc to an outline. Maybe I could move. I'm a believer in building. Sometimes I have writing partners who don't like that. Well, let's talk about everything first. And you could do that. Well, let's get this whole idea together. Well, I see the ending. This is how the ending has to be. Then I might write 2 sentences. I might write 3 sentences. I might write a paragraph. I might write 2 paragraphs. Okay. Somebody else would say, well, that's so dumb. Yeah, but nothing's, to me, a blank page is not, you have to have something on the page. You have to have something down somewhere. And that's the starting point. And once you put that thought down, thought on page, and I'll always say as a publisher, no matter what conversation I'm having, like I want to write a book or I'm writing a book or I'm thinking about, let me see what you have. Yeah. And I'm sure people are thinking, oh, why does he want to see it? Is he going to steal it? Is this? No, I want to see, are we looking at something like this with a couple words on it? Yep. Or how is it 300 pages? Is it notes like these? I could just pull up notes everywhere where I have around me. Look, they're all around. These are stories and concepts and things like that. So those are, get something down on paper, get it down on a computer, get it in a Word file, get it on a board, something down. Okay, I don't care if it's the word fish. Okay, well, that's a starting point. So, okay, how's that for a start?
Perfect. It's good.
You want to go on. So before I could just rattle off a million.
Okay. So
is there a place we need to go?
At what point do I say I need to look at finding a publisher? Am I done? Am I halfway done? What brings value when I come to sit down with someone like you? How prepared do I need to be?
Okay. So, one, you need to try on your own first and see how far you get. Like, I'm sure you've talked to authors that have done it in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
You've talked to authors that have done it in a year, 3 years. My first book took me 7 years and it stunk. So, but I that's where I was at the point. I went for it and, took me 7 years. I didn't know what I was doing. Sometimes it takes time. The guy that wrote The Queen's Gambit, that was hit during the pandemic. Yeah. I heard it took like 30 years for it to come out. And then it ended up right place, right time, right message. So, so to this thought, I hate artificial deadlines. There is no bigger threat to an author's success than an artificial deadline. Meaning, I want to have this book out by my birthday. Somebody else would say, set a date. I don't believe in artificial dates. I believe in giving that book the care it deserves, giving it the love. Now, you could set a timeline and say, hey, I'm going to start writing and I want to see where I'm at in 6 months. If in 6 months I'm not where I need to be, I want to get some help. I need somebody else. I need beta readers. I need to join writing groups. But I think it is always a matter of trying first and seeing. You could be one of those authors. I think our friend Debbie Griffiths wrote her book in a beautiful book that now she's shopping to like screenwriters and movie companies and things like that. I think she wrote it in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And but it was
there.
It was there, and she had done some research on structure and things like that. 6 weeks. But you try it on your own first. If she would have come to somebody before she tried it, maybe that would have never flowed out of her. And so I think you owe it to yourself to try first. Then, to your question, I wasn't avoiding your question. Yeah. Once you've tried, and whether it's you set a timeline of how long I'm going to try, or you're at a point where, hey, I'm stuck. I started writing and I don't even know where I'm going here. Then it's time to maybe get some help. It's time, because exploring publishing options, and you start to realize maybe I'm here and I need more help. Maybe I'm here and I need more support. Maybe I'm here and I need a coach. So you'd save yourself a lot of money if you're publishing in a way that needs to use money, but trying on your own first. Okay, here's what I'm talking about. Because when you walk into somebody, well, what is the book about? What do you want to write about? Why do you want to write it? So I think it's really giving yourself a fair shot first, and then you can come to somebody. So that's first. That's the first long answer for you. Go on.
I love it. Okay, so what are some of the common things that derail a new author?
One, family, friends. Yeah, the same things that should support you are the imposter syndrome. And I've been there before. Like, this is a book I wrote. My Name is Sharon. Yeah, and I probably wrote it cathartically at first, but I put it in front of one of the first editors, and they were like, "What the hell are you writing here?" Yeah, and I'm thinking I was writing a show where it was going to jump. It was a show that just was on NBC about a family. You know what that show was? Rachel was the mom. Anyway, so here I'm thinking that that my timeline works, that what I was writing worked, and it just took one editor, a developmental editor, to say, Dominick, I don't think your timeline really works on here. I'm confused by it. And I took that thought from one person, and they were right. And so one of my notes to you was, an editor is not trying to hurt you. They're not trying. You hired them, you trusted them, you asked them, and they gave their opinion. Right. You don't need to. I mean, so your book, your baby. So you make the final decisions. And I think early on, this is fact, and me included. I remember when those red marks, and I should get up and show you some files I have. And I will challenge anybody to send their red marks to me, that I have documents and manuscripts with more red marks. I'm telling you, like, people are like, what are you writing here? I mean, I need editors, because so early on, I was hurt by those red marks because you put so much time and effort into this book. It's your baby. Yeah. And then somebody says, red mark, change, restructure. But if you're willing to look at that now, I want to say I pray for red marks, but when I see them, I'm like, oh, thank God they caught that. Thank God they asked that question. Thank God they let me. I didn't look at that like that editor said about the timeline. So now back to family and friends. I told you I could talk all day long about this. Family and friends, sometimes they like you the way they are, the way you are. Yeah. They love you. So when you tell them, oh, I'm going to write a book, it's scary to them. They haven't done the research that you've done. Yeah. They might not be a writer. They have no, what are you going to write in the book? What are you going to get rich and famous and move out? They're scared. So they might not, or when you ask them to read your book and they don't read it. Oh, I'm hurt by that. They're busy. They might not know how important it is to you. They might not read books, and you're saying, hey, read this and tell me what you think. They're not an editor. So sometimes they can, sometimes they will, sometimes they're a reader, but there's so many things like that already the people closest to you, you're hoping they just said, yeah, go for it. That's the greatest thing of all time. That's not reality. The reality is they might not read it. They might not buy it. They might not have got the message clearly. Okay, now we're going to go into another one here. Sometimes as an author, we know the story so well. So let's say David tells all his great stories and we're like, wow, that was awesome. Sometimes if David would write it in a book, he's so used to telling that epic story where he's got these mannerisms, he's got that cute smile. People are completely people are completely engaged. But when you write it, you miss a lot of the details. Yeah. And so sometimes an author, because they know the story so well, they miss the details, and then they wonder why that story didn't connect with one of the early readers. Well, because you're missing half the detail that should be in that to tell that story clearly. Okay, go on.
Nice. Okay. Around the idea of your book, what about ownership? Like, I write the book, I get it published. Explain to me the ownership piece of a book. What do I, as the author, own outright, and what am I giving away by asking for help?
Okay. This is something I live my life in these details. And I love the details of contracts and things like that. So number one, an author should, whether you're querying or if you're looking at publishers and they are offering you a proposal or they are considering your to work with you, you need to review the contracts. And if you don't understand the language in the contract, you need to get with somebody that may understand language and contracts. You need to work to get quotes, proposals from multiple publishers. If you're going a route where it's a hybrid route or a supported, or even a publisher like me, the first publisher I signed with, I gave away 80% of my rights, and now they want me to buy the book back for $5,000 or $10,000. It's been 10 years. I mentioned 20 minutes ago that the book wasn't even good, and they want me to buy it back for $5,000 or $10,000. Bad contract. Except now, was it a bad contract? This is why we need to get into what's the reason you wrote the book. When I wrote my first book, I was coming out of bankruptcy. I was on a government repayment plan. I mentioned earlier that starting with zero startup. I had zero startup I had no funds. So we talked about earlier, you can do it with no funds. I had no funds. So I gave up my rights to the book and I made 20 cents a copy or something like that. And then if I bought books off of them, I'm sure they were selling the books to me at an increase. That's where I made any money on the books I sold personally. Yeah. But at that time, it was a good deal for me. because where I had no money. I was able to publish a book. I was able to start speaking. I was able to launch into other books and things like that because of that first contract I signed. Now, 10 years, 15 years later or whatever, when they want the book, when they own the rights to that book, it doesn't look as good to me. But what was my knowing my reason at the time? And so you don't get to do both things.
Yeah.
Like one time I refinanced a house, and this was in the mortgage bubble, refinanced it and bought another house with the money I'd borrowed. Then like 10 years later, the market changed. And when I sold the house, I didn't make money again. And my dad said, well, you had already made the money out of the house. You can't double dip. In that case, I had chosen a deal early on that worked for me then. And then I tried to rewrite the rules later on of, well, I'm mad that I have to pay $5,000 or $10,000 for those rights. So what I'm saying is you need to understand why that contract. If you're going with maybe Simon and Schuster, and maybe you send all these query letters and one of the big 5 publishers says, we want to publish your book. Oh, okay, that could be great. Unless you're like, well, I'm giving up a lot of my rights. They're telling me how my book ends. Sometimes they have a little more right in control of what you are putting in there. Okay, well, I gave up my rights and maybe they gave me a $20,000 advance. Okay, well, $20,000, if you were making $10 a book, which you would if you were self-publishing or something, you had to sell 2,000 books to make that same 20,000. So really looking into the numbers of, well, why am I signing this deal? If let's say you're a businessman who speaks every week. Right. Well, now you're going to go to Simon & Schuster and give them a portion of your profits when you already have a captive audience. I remember I went to Book Expo a few years back. It's in the Jarvis Center in New York. And you would see at some of the independent, like they'd have people signing autographs, like let's say Kevin Hart or Al Roker or whoever these famous people were. And then you'd have some independent publishers who maybe had somebody that did a graphic novel or wrote a book for teenagers. And their line was around the whole place. Because in your niche, maybe you already have the audience. You might have an audience of supporters already. So when you launch the book, and if you owned your own rights, you could have made all the money off it rather than splitting it with somebody else. So that's part of that process. So to understanding the contracts, really digging into the contracts. Well, how much do I pay for books? I just had an author recently, a U.S. author, and they dealt with a publisher out of Canada. And could be fine, but I noticed the book, when they selling across the books they were getting from their publisher, when I read the contract and dug in, they were having trouble getting them from Canada to the U.S. There was a charge that made their book a lot higher than I don't think it was really a competitive price. And so there's things that you need to look at. I had another author that signed with like a publisher in Ireland. Well, they couldn't even buy their own books. They had to buy their own book. They were thrilled. A publisher in Ireland wants me. Well, then basically they gave up their rights and had to buy their books on Amazon. They couldn't even get books at a discount. So there's a lot of language in those contracts that you need to understand. How are they making their money? And really question them. If you don't understand something, ask the question. Ask me one of those questions. Here's the reason why. Because I prefer to do where you have the ownership of your, like for me, I do some traditional publishing where we make certain offers. But I prefer that they have 100% ownership, because a year from now, 2 years from now, basically the distributors pay on like 60, 90, 120 days. So if you sell a book 2 years from now, let's say a buddy says, I just bought 10 books off of you online. Well, at best, you're getting paid at 120 days. So in my case, the author, even like, let's say when you first sell your book, you sell 50 books, 100 books. And once it goes through distributors and stuff, they're taking a little cut of it.
Yep.
And now you're not getting paid for 120 days at best. And you might, after years, how many days do I get paid after 60, right? How many days do I get paid after 30? I remember my buddy bought a book. When was it? I think that was a while ago. That was a couple months ago, when really it was 2 weeks ago. And now, all of a sudden, you look back at me and you're like, oh, hey, did I get that money I was supposed to get?
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's 120 days out at best. And so that's a position I don't love to be in. So asking the publisher those questions, well, why do you do this? Why do you do that? And once you understand them, then I think your relationship will be a lot better.
Perfect. Okay, talk about reviews. How important are reviews on the back end, behind the scenes, as a reader goes and leaves a review for an author? What does that do? Not just for like good feelings for the author to read somebody's comments, but what does that do behind the scenes to help kind of promote the book?
Okay, I love reviews, especially verified reviews.
When you purchase the book, right?
Yeah, a verified review means, let's say on an Amazon or something like that, they bought the book through Amazon. All reviews are helpful because you scroll down through them, you see that it's got this many stars. But when you bought your book through Amazon, if you can verify that you bought it, because what happens is people could buy. Right. There's a lot of things you can buy in this world. You can buy followers. You can buy likes.
Yeah.
You can buy reviews. But it is a lot tougher to buy a verified review of somebody that bought your book and then reviewed it. Now, also, if you're looking up books on, let's go with an Amazon. If somebody is looking up books, let's say, I almost want somebody to, while they're listening, pull up their screen, and you will see that it has a thing of suggested books.
Yes.
When you're, down at the bottom of your screen, there's probably 8 suggested books. One thing that all those suggested books have in common is a lot of reviews, because Amazon is a business. The other online sellers are a business. And meaning, they know that somebody bought that product already. They have a verified review that somebody liked that product. People are more inclined to buy something that has been bought multiple times, that has good reviews. So once you get to 50, 100 over those reviews, it is more likely when people go on and buy books that your book is popping up and you didn't have to do anything. So that's the beauty of, let's go.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. To the books. That's just one of the things about selling books. If you build your online presence and things like that, while you're sleeping at night, somebody might buy a book. Right. And maybe they buy two, and maybe a week later somebody buys one. So imagine that while you're sleeping, while you're chasing your dreams, while you're driving your daughter to lacrosse, you may have sold a book. So we'll get, now next, what else you got? I'm loving it. Yeah.
Oh, this is good. This is good. I want to close off, Tom, with just inspiring people no matter what they're doing. For me, Dom, you're the king of inspiration for me and motivation. It's not just a tagline. It's not a title for a company. It's who you are.
Yeah.
And we interact a lot on Clubhouse, and I just love being a part of your rooms and who you are as a person. It just radiates in everything you do. There's nothing fake about you. And that's what I love the most about our interaction. So I want to just share a little bit of Dom motivation and inspiration for people to end off, and looking forward to the next 100 episodes for our podcast. Again, I'm going to have the opportunity to speak to more great people. I just want to encourage people today that are listening, and let's just give them a little bit of the Dom magic here as we close off.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and I'm loving your 200. I can't wait to see 300, 400, 500. I just want people to take action, move forward, even if it's the small. No, there is no small step. You know, like Neil Armstrong when he was on the moon, wasn't he talking about small steps?
Yeah.
There was no small step, even when he was on. I mean, come on, the guy's on the moon. We look back at it 50 years, there was no, has it been 70 years or something? No small step. So my point being here, if you Googled something today, if you Googled how to write a book, okay. If you all of a sudden I had a note that if you read a book in your genre today, or if you bought one, you're moving forward. Well, maybe why? Because maybe I want to see, maybe I need to know what else is out there, that this is something similar has been done. Maybe you bought a book today that wasn't in your genre. I'm reading Kitchen Confidential right now by Anthony Bourdain. Brilliant. It's romantic. How can a book about cooking be romantic? Because there's so much passion in it.
Right.
You can tell he loves the cooking, loves the journey, loves the kitchen. It's beautiful. So my point is moving forward. I didn't finish my book today. Well, you didn't have to. Because if we go back to those artificial deadlines, right? Those artificial timelines that set you up for failure. Move forward. Do one thing today. Okay, so if I was if you're talking to an author, I would bet even at 10 o'clock at night, dictate in your phone for 30 seconds. I didn't get anything done today, but I'm going to move forward with my book tomorrow. I'm going to talk about this. Yeah, okay. You did something. And that's what a believer of, I mentioned the 7 years it took me to write my first book. Well, I was broke. My son became diabetic and was getting 10 shots a day. Here's all these other things. I was overwhelmed, but you move forward. And if you can move forward at 2 o'clock in the morning, if you can read and become a little better, if you can start a Facebook page, start inner groups. Now, by the time you get done, all these things will have moved forward. And inch by inch by inch, building the foundation, the building blocks of wherever you're trying to go. And that's what, just start today, start any way you can, and just keep moving forward. Don't you dare give up.
That is a great way to stop. Send everybody to your website. Come on, talk about it before we go.
Okay. I'm Motivation Champs pretty much everywhere you can find us. Just websites, www.motivationchamps.com, and anywhere across social media. And we're just trying, like David said, to share inspiration, smiles, positivity, good vibes 24/7. I want to live in a world where 20 years from now, people are like, I remember back when there was negativity on the news. I remember back when people were mad at each other. No. We're going to create a world where it's positive content, where people open the door for each other, smile at each other. And so 24/7, we try to share that kind of content and help other people share the same. And hopefully we can make a little bit of a difference.
Amazing. You said open the door for somebody. I used that yesterday in a recording, Don. So you just nailed that one. Oh my gosh, that's freaky. Perfect. I love that. Let's hold space for each other. Let's encourage each other. There's too much of all the other stuff going on around us. We need to be different in how we approach each other and support each other. And you prove that every time I talk to you, Don. So
love you, man. Love you. This is a big hug I'm giving them up. Does this look weird?
I love it. Thank you so much for being part of episode 200. I'll see you in about 100, okay?
Congrats, brother. We love you. We all love you.
Awesome, Dom. This is all your fault, by the way. You know that, right?
Yeah, small point.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for subscribing and following. And you're listening this far in the podcast, so you are my best friend. I'm sorry, but you are now my best friend. So welcome. Nice to meet you. Thank you for being here. LivingTheNextChapter.com has a link on the website to our Facebook group. Are you on Facebook? Probably. You can go there and you can actually interact with our guests. You can talk to them. You can hear more about their journey, about their books. You can speak to them directly. You don't need me. You can come right over to livingthenextchapter.com, click on our Facebook link to our community. You can talk to other listeners of the podcast from around the world who are on Facebook. And, again, speak with our guests. Don't you want to speak to the guests you just heard from? Yeah, you can do that on Living the Next Chapter. Go over there. There's links to our Facebook group, and you're welcome to join. Thanks for listening.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.